Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, is an insightful podcast dedicated to the strategic minds leading today's higher ed institutions. Each episode brings a unique perspective from visionary and tech-forward college presidents, chancellors, and other high-level academic leaders, diving into the complexities and nuances of running a modern educational institution. This show is hosted by Dr. Brian Gross, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Athletics at Hartwick College, and is a valuable resource for current and aspiring leaders in academia, offering a playbook of visionary ideas and practical solutions for the ever-evolving landscape of higher ed. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Visionary Voices wherever you get your podcasts.
I think the number one fear for anybody is they're scared they're going to break Slate. With the permissions and everything that we have in Slate, I think you can have the comfort in knowing it took time to build it to a certain level. You're not going to break it in one click.
Welcome to Mission Admissions, a podcast that helps higher ed become better recruiters, communicators, marketers, and leaders. I'm your host, Jeremy Tiers, and every other week I'll share my candid conversations with industry leaders and difference makers from both inside and outside of higher ed. You'll walk away with advice, tips, and strategies to help you both professionally and personally. Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. You can learn more at element451.com. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tiers, and this is episode 41 of the Mission Admissions podcast. A CRM is one of the biggest expenses for any admissions and enrollment marketing team, and yet I continue to find that at a lot of schools, only one or two people have either a good or great understanding of the technology they use every day. The goal of today's episode is to change that, and I'm excited to have Drew Carr, who is the Director of Enrollment Operations for Nebraska Wesleyan University, help me do that. NWU is one of more than 1,800 colleges and universities that use Slate. And in addition to presenting an excellent session on Slate last week at the GPACAC MOACAC joint conference that I just returned from, Drew is also the technology chair for GPACAC. So welcome to the show, Drew.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. Happy to join you.
Let's just start from the beginning. Help us understand, when did you guys get Slate? What was your role when you first got Slate? Give us kind of some backstory there.
As you mentioned, I've been at Nebraska Wesleyan for the entirety of my career. Was in a recruiter role to begin with, and then moved more to the operations side. The previous CRM that we were on, we had been on that for over 10 years. So as I took the role of that and got more in depth with it, it became obvious that it wasn't meeting our needs, and we were paying a premium price, as you mentioned, paying a premium price and not using it to the full extent. So I was actually tasked as the lead to find a new CRM. Slate rose to the top in that search, as it does in many institutions that go through the search process right now. We went live in July of 2020. Myself, my director, VP, and our web developer actually went to Slate Launchpad in January 2020. I believe it was the last in-person session pre-COVID, so was kind of unique, kind of a blessing, because then by the time we got back and started in the implementation process, COVID shut everything down and really allowed me in the role that I was in to dig in, really get it implemented and up and running without any other distractions in the office, because the office was home.
If you're thinking back, Drew, what ultimately were some of the initial challenges that you ultimately looked at, and or as you were talking with your colleagues, you said, okay, like if we're going to maximize our investment in this CRM, these are things we have to figure out?
One of the biggest challenges is just having a team and a plan to back you. I think a lot of people, especially if they take implementation on their own, like we did, if you don't go into that implementation with a clear plan of what you want the CRM to accomplish, it's never going to be successful. We've had unfortunately, some departments on our campus who've had some similar experiences and are having some frustrations with some current CRMs. And some of that is just because of the plan going in. You really have to have a leader. And I had the full support of my director and VP to focus on Slate because we knew it was going to be a tool that would take us to the next level and make us successful. And so it's just finding out those ways that you can bring efficiencies to your current procedures. Pre-Slate, we processed and printed every single application in our office. So really, one full-time job was consistent of processing applications, running them into our student information system, printing out those applications, making folders. As soon as we went live on Slate, we got rid of paper applications. So virtually that job was eliminated. Now, of course, we didn't eliminate that person. The roles just shifted around. But it created a much larger efficiency in an area that was just a time suck and one that in today's world doesn't need to exist. One of the biggest things is to dig in and learn Slate, because without that, you're not going to ever find out the efficiencies that it can create to make your job in a role, potentially as a dual role, that much easier. So whether it be using the events, the travel aspect of Slate, all of those different types of things that it may seem like it's going to take a lot to learn. While it may take some time up front, the time savings that you will get back from implementing some of those things will more than pay for itself and make your job and role that much more enjoyable.
If you had to tell somebody else who was going to start, whether it's Slate or any CRM, these are skills that you need to have if you're effectively going to, again, become really good with your CRM. What are a couple of skills that are absolute must haves for anybody when it comes to, again, just being better in their CRM?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because there's so many skills out there. Slate does a great job where you don't have to be a coder to be a great Slate person. I have no background in coding. Of course, through my years, I've learned enough to get myself into trouble on occasions. But by no means am I an HTML expert or a Python expert or anything like that. Those skills are things that you can pick up just through your time in Slate. I think someone who has the skills of a self-starter are important. Someone who can take ownership of something and not rely upon others to direct them where to go. Someone who's intrigued about how things work, I think is very important to have in a role to be successful with Slate. Slate out of the box is a very generic product, and then they pretty much hand the keys over to every university and in a way say build it as you see fit. So just because you're at an instance or a school that uses Slate doesn't mean every other school in the country is using Slate in the same way. The background process of it is all the same, but there's always going to be that learning aspect. So, as I mentioned, the plan at Nebraska Wesleyan, we developed a plan. Although things we did in the beginning, we've worked on changing this way we do some of that now. But just always someone who's that self starter, motivated, and truly intrigued by learning the process, I think are the most important skills. In addition to all those skills, someone who's always curious and always looking for new ways to do things and push the boundaries, I think is very important.
And I love that you hit on curiosity. I think that's a skill that I talk about a lot with young professionals, whether we're talking about becoming better in a CRM, becoming a better leader, becoming better at their craft, whatever their role is. Curiosity, I think, is super important. So then I know, because we talked about this last week when we were in Kansas City at that conference, Drew, a lot of your knowledge in Slate, besides obviously the launch pad that you talked about initially, back in 2020, you've just essentially taught yourself. So can you kind of give everybody an idea? What does that process look like when it comes to teaching yourself? Meaning, is it a weekly thing? Is it a bi-weekly thing? Give us an idea on things like frequency, how much time you would spend in an average sitting. Did you come in with, okay, I'm going to learn these couple of things today? And then give us any, understanding of those types of things.
Yeah, I would say at the beginning it was very much, of course, more time intensive, as expected. Once you're diving into Slate and learning it for the first time, much more time intensive. So we had the benefit of going to Launchpad and kind of learn all the basics of Slate there. I'm not sure if they went back to the in-person Launchpad yet, or if it's mostly virtual stuff. But definitely Slate has a lot of great resources out there, former webinars that they've hosted, all sorts of things where as you implement kind of the bigger aspects of Slate, rely upon those because they cover the basics of what you need to do. I would say learning Slate is a constant thing. I can't say that I ever try to dedicate time to learning Slate or that I ever stop learning Slate. There's always something new that you can pick up. So anytime that I am presented with a project or a query request or something like that, I don't just try to jump in and achieve that. I try to think of the most efficient way to go about it.
So then put your admissions counselor hat on for me, Drew, because again, you've been in that role. You talk with team members there. You talk with, I'm sure, counselors at other colleges where you have colleagues. What do you think then holds a lot of people back from saying, okay, I'm going to constantly be trying to, better myself within Slate. I'm going to take this very seriously. I'm going to do it in an intentional way. What do you think holds most people back?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this because I had a conversation with someone at the GPACAC MOACAC conference, Aaron Cook from the University of Missouri, and we actually got directly into this conversation with some of his admissions reps sitting at the table. And I think the number one fear for anybody is they're scared they're going to break Slate. With the permissions and everything that we have in Slate, I think you can have the comfort in knowing you're not going to break Slate. Like, it took time to build it to a certain level. You're not going to break it in one click. So I think it's important to know that. Slate also has great resources. So if you are not the Slate captain or in charge of things, talk to your Slate captain, because there's things like test environments and clean Slate and those type of instances where you can jump in and do whatever you want, and it doesn't actually affect the live production instance that you operate in daily. It looks the same, especially if it's the test environment. A lot of times it's a carbon copy of your production environment, so you can jump in and have real life examples that are at a static point in time to build queries, to dig into those things, because I think it's super valuable as an admissions counselor to be able to do some of those things and not have to rely on your team to accomplish those things. I'll admit I never accomplish things as quickly as I'd like. I've implemented a ticketing system within Slate at our university, and by no means is that a clean thing every day when I go home. So there's always questions and things out there. So the more that you can pick up the knowledge of some of the basic things like query building and those types of things, the better, because you'll be able to kind of progress in your job. And then, of course, as you learn more in Slate, you're going to open up more opportunities for you in the higher education world, just because Slate is becoming such a well-known CRM throughout the industry.
What then, probably, if you had to think, are the top one or two questions you get from the counselors there at Nebraska Wesleyan when it comes to anything from queries to snippets to other things that ultimately they either are like, hey, Drew, can you help me with this? Hey, Drew, I was messing around in Slate. I don't know if I did this wrong, but like, help me understand what a couple of those frequently asked questions, if we want to call them FAQs, are, Drew.
Queries have become a little bit more complex with the introduction, and I think we'll get into this later, with the introduction of configurable joins. It's a super scary word, I know, right? Configurable joins, what's that even mean? But in the Slate world, it allows you to build much more complex queries and accomplish so much more with a single query than you could ever before. So I think the knowledge of configurable joins is hard to pick up unless you are dedicated and want to pick it up. So that's one thing, because most of our queries that we now operate in are all configurable joins. So if someone's wanting to modify them and they don't have the knowledge of configurable joins, they're going to have questions about that. You mentioned snippets. Snippets are the best thing that has ever helped me in my position, because as soon as I introduced it to our team, I get no questions about sending out random ad hoc emails for staff to groups of students, because they create a snippet and they send that snippet out to whoever they want to send it out to. I would say a lot of it is things that they feel like Slate can accomplish. In Slate, I've always said Slate can accomplish whatever you want it to accomplish. You just have to build it, and have the team and the skills to build it. But there's always those things that make their work more efficient. And those are the questions that you're going to get with, how can Slate do this to help me? Or how can Slate do this to help me? Obviously, it's looking for, they're trying to help themselves, but because they're helping themselves, they're also helping you, because it's taking one more thing off your plate.
So then how do you, and I had this conversation, ironically, I know we keep referencing last week's conference. It's fresh in our mind less than even a week ago, but I had this conversation with somebody not related to Slate, but it was a leadership level conversation last week. You have younger staff, which a lot of admissions counselors are, and they come and they say, Drew, I need help with this. Where's the balance then in you saying, okay, help me understand how comfortable you are doing this, or do you understand what this means, or have you gone in and tried this, versus saying, well, you're busy, so you know what, it's just easier for me, instead of trying to ask you all that, to just do it for you and then get, where's the balance, Drew, do you think, in terms of saying, I want you to understand, I'm willing to help you, but yet the only way you're going to get better at this is if like you actually do some of the work?
It's a super hard balance, because I'm currently, I'm a one-man band when it comes to Slate in terms of full-time people in Slate. So when people come to me with questions, it's not like I can delegate that too much to anybody else. So I would say it's a very hard balance, because it will take you more time to, again, one of those things where it'll take you more time up front to teach the person the things to do. But in the long run, it's going to save you more time, because they're going to stop coming back to you. So I would say the balance for me typically lies within, if it's a consistent thing that I have them keep coming back to me, it may not be the same exact thing, but in the same realm of things. If they keep coming back to me 2 to 3 times within a couple weeks, that's a light bulb to me that, okay, we need to have a conversation about how you guys can accomplish this on your level. Let's go through a quick training. So one of the things that came up was in previous years was the creation of like high school visits and college fairs within Slate. So obviously we don't know all the admissions counselor travel aspects, and to expect my team, myself, or a couple part-time workers to know that, be checking calendars, trying to keep Slate up to date with the events that we're attending, it's just not realistic. So it was before we launched travel season, we all sat down, we went through how to create events, how to use the template that was created ahead of time. So there's still things that you can create to make their process of learning a little bit easier. You have, with configurable joins, you have standard query templates that as soon as they start a new configurable joins, it already puts common used fields and common used filters available for them to pick from. So in a way, they're learning configurable joins without having to know all the background of it. So yeah, I would say the balance typically is, if it's a one-off on our realm of things, ad hoc request where it's just going to be a one-time thing, then yes, it's probably easier for me to just jump in and do it for them. If it's something where it's going to be a consistent thing that's ongoing and going to be an interruption in my work, let's sit down and figure out if you truly have the skills or the abilities as a group to do this. And if so, let's put it on your plate, because it's going to take you less time to do it than to come to me and figure it out, and then for me to execute on that plan.
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news! I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times best-selling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student-centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
So if you think back then to all of those different, we'll call them trainings that you've essentially helped lead there for the rest of the team at Nebraska Wesleyan, what are things that if other people listening to this are going, okay, well, people are either coming to me or they're coming to me hit or miss, maybe these are things I should be thinking about because these may be training opportunities for my team to get better and increase their knowledge level?
Yeah, so I mentioned, of course, the events. So training your admissions counselors in events and having them responsible for creating those events as they get them on their schedule. One, it helps because it keeps Slate up to date in terms of knowing what events we're going to. And then as prospect cards come back in or scans come back in, the events already created, we can easily tie those to something already existing in Slate. So creating those, but then also because you have those events in Slate, you can do outreach ahead of the events to students who are tied to those locations and encourage them to stop by your table or come see me in the classroom or something, whatever that may be. So that was one of the biggest things, was the events, getting them up to date on events. Some of the other things would be application changes. So Nebraska Wesleyan is a test optional application school. So of course we ask the question on the application, do you wish to be test optional? We try to create the language as clear and obvious as we can, but there's still some students who are confused by that. And so as admissions counselors, as they go through the conversation, someone might want to be switched to test optional, or they might not want to be test optional anymore. Whatever that aspect may be, we found that they were coming to me a lot to say, hey, they want to be test optional or they don't want to be test optional. So you can either do a training on how to change that field, or there's ways that you can create a form that automatically changes that field for you. So they're just submitting a quote unquote internal form to make those changes. It's no time other than submitting the form, and it automatically makes those changes. So any application changes we have, we try to do it on the admissions counselor level, especially if it's just a single field or something simple like that. Now, if it's a huge application change, like we need to change something, or if it has to do with enrolled students, then we typically filter those through the operations side, because there's usually more hoops to jump through in terms of registrar and those types of things, in terms of what we need to do to make sure both the CRM and the student information system are up to date. A lot of it just comes down to things that you get requests for over and over and over again. There's going to be an easy way to do that, whether it's a form, an internal form to create to change up or update information, whether it's training them on how to directly do that in Slate, whatever that may be. So yeah, I'd say application changes, events, addresses, phone numbers, adding parent relationships, those types of things. When we first started in Slate, a lot of that ran through operations. Now most of that's directly on the admissions counselors.
What are some things that are, we'll call them do's and don'ts? If somebody says, all right, I want to become good, maybe I'm not ready for configurable joins yet, but I want to be able to create my own kinds of queries, just anything that's do's and don'ts that you think would be helpful if somebody's like, I've never done that, but I'd like to figure out how to.
Yeah, so the first and most important thing, even with local queries, which is where Slate started, to configurable joins is where they're going, and in a way where they are now, is you really have to know the system in the background of the system. So where are things stored? What are the field names called? What are you actually trying to query for? So I always like to, anytime, even still, when I build a query, I like to go into the query with a plan of what am I hoping the outcome of this query is. So you mentioned, like, am I just trying to pull all the active applicants from a 30-mile radius of Nebraska Wesleyan? If that's the case, that gives you guidance on where to start with a query. The key word is there is where to start. If you're looking for for applications, you're going to be in the application base. If you're looking for people, you're going to be in the person base. If you're looking for events, you're going to be in the form base, like all of those different types of things. So every query that you run, if you run the same query in person and application, you're going to get different numbers because those are two very different bases. What I always say is know where you're going with the query, because that one tells you where to start, and then always try to, and I mentioned this actually in my session at GPACAC this year, which was on querying and reporting with Slate. Always try to come up, kind of like the scientific method, come up with a hypothesis of what you think the outcome of the query is going to be. Because then when you get done running the query, if the query is giving you a number that's in the realm of where you expected it to be, you know you're probably correct. If it's way off, that means either you were wrong in your hypothesis, either pleasantly surprised or disappointed, or you built the query wrong, and something's just one little filter could be off and throwing those numbers off. Always have people double check queries as well. So read through the queries. It's always good, even if someone doesn't know all the query language. They can still bring aspects or look at things that may be missing. So for instance, one mailing we sent out, I had built the query, had it ready to go, had our internal team look it over, and I missed a section of the applicant filter that needed to be on that query for it to be a successful mailing, and someone else caught that. So people that are operating in queries every day, you get into the realm of things and you just keep going, and sometimes you miss things. So I think it's good to always don't ever expect the query is right, even if you feel like you got it under control. Have someone double check it, especially when it comes down to if it's a query for a mailing that's going out.
What is the value, in your opinion, of, hey, when you become really good at queries, when you start to teach yourself configurable joins, these are some of the benefits or ROI that you're going to see?
Yeah, I would say it just makes everything operate way more efficiently. So instead of having three different queries that staff are having to check for certain things, you have a singular query. So an example of this, and we're going through this right now, is enrollment steps needed to kind of take their next step at Nebraska Wesleyan and enroll, whether that be register for classes, housing, those types of things. So I have a query for our staff that all of their students who've submitted their tuition deposit, and then I have a column for every single enrollment step that we have, and then it's whether they've completed that step or not. So it's a configurable join on a form or a configurable join on an event registration, and then one of the columns in there calls out how many steps are missing, and then I can sort the query from those missing the most steps to those missing the least steps. So in a way, that was probably before we moved to Slate, a query. It would be a query that would have had to be 5 or 6 different queries. Now it's one singular query. They jump in, they can know at the top, those are the ones that we need to focus on because they're missing the most, and then be more efficient and work from that way. So the better the query, as you mentioned, the better and more efficient your team is going to be able to be, because they're not having to check 5 different queries to accomplish something. It's one singular query that calls it out. And also you can get super creative with the export field. So before, whenever we would copy parents on emails or something, you'd always have to add the parent one email and the parent two email and step parent one and step parent two and legal guardian, those types of things. Now, because of configurable joins, I can create one export field, and then everyone that's in the category of parent, every single email that we have attached to that student record is thrown into the CC with a comma delimited. So it takes 5 export fields down to 1 and makes it much easier to handle, and for sure then you're getting every parent copied on that email.
And so, in addition to allowing you to personalize more, the better you get ultimately with your queries, you're going to save yourself a massive amount of time.
Definitely. Yes.
So, Drew, we've talked about queries a little bit. You can obviously build reports in Slate. When would you, for example, build a report instead of a query?
I would say reports are the typical base normal things that your VPs and stuff are going to be interested in. So class profiles, benchmarking, those types of things. Anytime where you're comparing this year to last year, that's going to be a report. Now, the report may not be a visual report. It may be a table report where numbers are there. Just because it's a report doesn't mean it has to be pretty with graphs and charts and all that stuff. In those aspects, anytime you're comparing things or anytime you're just wanting, in a way, an overview of something, especially when it comes to comparison, always operate in that report thing. If it's just a list that you're needing, then it's always going to be a query. If it's a singular list that you're just trying to pull all the applicants from this year, by no means is that a report. Now, if you're trying to dig into something with that list, so look at the majors and look at where they're coming from and look at the gender and those types of things, then it's a report. So I would say if the outcome is to simply generate a list, that's a query. If the outcome is to dig into information and break out information within the list that you're searching for, that's when you're going to start digging into the reports in Slate.
And so, just so we're clear, an example of that might be, let's say you want to compare year over year spring travel or fall travel, right? You could obviously come up with a report that would allow you to see the differences in terms of not just maybe where you went, but how many students you saw, et cetera, correct?
It's hilarious that you mentioned that, is because that is a report I created this year for our team, just to see every single admissions counselor in their territory. How many high school visits did we do? How many college fairs did we do? How many other presentations did we do? How many did we do last year? Or is there a deficit anywhere? If there is a deficit, was it a strategic deficit, or did we miss something? But then, yeah, I would say the next level to that is how many people did we see at each of them? If we have deficits this year, but we saw way more people, that's probably not as concerning as if it would be a deficit this year and we saw way less people. There's probably something we need to
The
address
reason I
there.
brought it up, that I always encourage anybody who wants to be a better territory manager, whether they have a baseline knowledge of Slate or, they're on Drew's level or above, those are examples of reports that ultimately would be super helpful for you when it comes to becoming a better territory manager and being able to plan very intentionally where you're going, for example, in the spring or the fall.
We also have reports that are portal aspect, where we can have things on portals in a way, web pages and those types of things where people can come to and view the reports. And one aspect that we use is we use that application login to people who've not submitted their application but have logged back into that application recently. That's low hanging fruit that our recruiters can go out and jump on if they still haven't submitted it, but they logged in a couple days ago.
And so much of this, I hope, as everybody's listening to this, what you're taking away, besides the fact that it requires a lot of self initiative, as Drew talked about, to become better at anything, let alone Slate and technology, is that when you become better with understanding how to write queries, doing configurable joins, knowing what kinds of fields to look at, not only do you become a better and more efficient territory manager, but it really does allow you to have more personalized and relevant conversations with prospective students and parents. And that continues to be such an area that prospective students and parents, and every single data point that I have internally from the work we do at Two Collegiate Strategies, the more personal and relevant the information that you share with them, the easier it is for them to either take action, and that next step, whatever that next step could be, like Drew said, signing up for a visit, finishing their application, getting you a high school transcript, coming to admitted student day, or if you're going to ask, for example, as your call to action, a direct question, it makes it easier for them to say, all right, if Drew's my admissions counselor, I would feel comfortable doing that because, boy, it's clear he's taking an interest in me, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So, Drew, talk to me about the Slate community forums online, because I hear a lot from a lot of people within Slate. Boy, Jeremy, like those are a lifesaver in some cases. If somebody's like, what do you mean? Or they've heard maybe about this, but they really don't, they haven't messed around with it. Talk about just those community forums that are online.
Yeah, community forums, as you mentioned, are lifesavers. So you have the new community forums, which Slate, in great timing, has just rolled out. So a little bit more modern look to the community forums and stuff now. And in a way, they're trying to kind of bring all the outside forums into one. So you, of course, have the built-in community forums where people will post questions or share ideas or provide feedback to Slate of features that they would like. I can guarantee you, if you have something in Slate that you wish was there, so don't a bunch of other people, and they've probably shared that feedback, and they're probably flagging it, and hopefully it's rising to the top for you. I a lot of times will even just dig into there, even if I don't have feedback. What are other people sharing, and how do I why haven't I thought of this? What do I need to be doing in Slate to ensure that I'm operating at a level to be thinking about this? So there's times where if I get a free hour, I'll jump into the feedback and scroll through it and just see what's out there. Or I'll jump into the community forums, sort by newest to oldest of people posing questions, and just see what questions are being asked currently in the market. You have the forums where you can go post questions. You have a Slack channel. You have the Facebook friends users group. All of these different channels where now for me, if I run into a problem and I'm experiencing issues in Slate, I'll go throw something in Slack, and within the first 15 minutes, I have 3 people who've responded with a way that I could solve or resolve the issue. So instead of going through the process of opening a ticket or something like that, I guarantee, because there's so many schools out there on Slate right now, someone else has run into a similar situation. Go share that with the community. Higher ed has, when I first started, it always had the mantra of keep your secrets hidden behind lock and key. Don't share anything with anybody. Slate is the complete opposite of that. We're all just here wanting every other Slate user to be successful because there's openings across the community. So the more that you can help and show yourself, more doors are going to be open for you.
Drew, the last thing I do is something called fun rapid fire. So I'm just going to give you a handful of things, and I want the first thing that comes to mind for each of them, okay?
Sounds great.
Favorite drink to start your day with?
Coffee.
Black coffee?
Yeah, black coffee.
Okay. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a great one. Probably flying.
What was the last thing you Googled?
I'm guessing my wife and I are going to Italy, so my guess is it's something with along the lines of the Italy trip coming up here in a couple weeks.
That sounds like a fun trip.
Yeah.
If you had to have a walkout song, what would it be?
Ooh, such a great song. I've had to answer this a few times in actually this last year. It would be Cinderella Man by Eminem.
And what would you do? I don't know if you play the lottery, but let's just say you do. What would you do if you won the lottery tomorrow, Drew?
One of those things where I have told my director that I would be more than willing to continue working because I would get bored at home. You don't have to pay me, but I want to show up when I want to show up, and I want to leave when I want to leave. So one of those, I'll help you, but I actually don't know how much I'd help because you wouldn't see me consistently. So yes, would try to throw some of it in savings, keep some for the kids, and then of course, new house, probably some newer cars, but try not to spend it too much.
Drew, thanks again for just the time today and your openness to sharing. And I really do encourage people to take the next step when it comes to anything that you're hearing from my guests on different podcast episodes. I'm doing my best to try to hit on things and bring people like Drew on, who I know are going to cover a topic that I get asked about a lot. And so I encourage you to take 1, 2, 5 things away from today's episode and every other episode that you listen to and find ways to put them into action. And if Drew and I can help you do that, you know how to get a hold of both of us. Drew, I appreciate your time today, my friend.
Yes, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Great conversation.
Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a number of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admission professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Day Cabilds, and so many other amazing leaders in the higher ed space. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create more meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. You can learn more at element451.com.